Hey everybody, today I'm going to be talking about Detour, which is a 1945 American crime noir film directed by Edgar G. Ulmer. Now, before I start with this review, just like any other review I'll do in this channel, there will be some mild to serious spoilers, so just watch at your own discretion. Now, to start, Edgar G. Ulmer is known as one of the pioneers of American crime and noir cinema, and he is known to be the type of director to create very strong and tight films with a very small budget and an unknown cast. In the case of Detour, Detour only took 6 days to shoot and had a budget of only $200,000. And in fact, when this film was released in cinemas, it was only released in a few cinemas back then. And by this I mean a lot of people slept on it and a lot of people didn't like it at all. And it had been forgotten after a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks. But as the genre started to evolve throughout the years and as have decades have passed, the film started to earn its cult status, and many more people have been appreciating this film for what it is, and it certainly has been regarded as one of the best noir films in the entire film history. And I can definitely see why Detour is a great film. Now, when it first came out, it was blatantly panned by critics, mainly because it had a lot of narrative leaps and technical jumps and technical errors. And if you watch it now, and if you look at it on a surface level value, it is easy to disregard the film for what it is and for the story that it was trying to tell. And it's easy to pinpoint certain aspects or certain narrative logical jumps in the story and say, oh, that doesn't make sense. The film is not that good. And I can understand why people won't like it, but actually, I think that the limitations to the film, the technical errors and narrative jumps, sort of strengthen what the film was going for, what Edgar G. Ulmer wanted the film to be like. And it might sound strange, but I don't think the story was meant to be taken on a literal level. Because if you look at it on a literal level, okay, so we have a struggling pianist who hitchhikes to California to meet his girlfriend, and on his way to hitchhike, he meets a man, and he hitches with the man, goes to the car. The man is named Haskell, by the way. Goes to the car, and the man suddenly dies. And okay, that sounds weird at all, but as soon as he gets the man's identity and meets another girl, Vera, and later on in the film, Vera would be dead, accidentally killed by our main character, Al. You may think, what is the story trying to go for? What is this film trying to suggest? Is Al trying to tell his story? And if you think about it, for me personally, when I first saw it, I was quite muddled with what the film wanted to tell. But after repeated viewings, I realized, what Al wanted to tell was not his story, but rather an alibi that he's trying to create out of all of these scattered events that simultaneously happened. It just blew his mind all at once. And it might sound weird to think about it like that, but I really think the genius in this film, especially in Ulmer's direction and how he handled the film, was how he noticed his limitations as a director, both stylistically and technically. He thought to himself, okay, I don't have a big budget, so I can't compare myself to great filmmakers there like Billy Wilder or films that starred Humphrey Bogart, since he only had a small cast. So how can I strengthen this film, and how can I make it as noir-ish, and how can I make it convey the spirit of noir as possible? And he took these limitations and crafted these limitations into the film, because in the end, what the film is lacking are not the limitations themselves, because the film is ultimately the limitation. And it might sound weird to say that the director's limitations make the film better than it is, but I think one of Edgar G. Ulmer's strengths here is that he knows how to tell a story. He has an uncanny ability to tell a story by not showing much. Now, this film is a very short film. It runs for only about an hour or 67 minutes, and the narrative, as I have stated earlier, on surface level, fairly simple enough to follow, kind of weird with all the logical jumps. But if you look at it more, if you watch this film again, you can pinpoint certain areas of inconsistency, and you can start to think for yourself, why why make this decision? Why would Al make this decision? Why would Al bury the body of Haskell? And why would he, basically steal his identity if he can just easily go to a car dealer and sell the car to another person, or basically reveal himself to the police so that he won't be convicted of a crime? Why was Sue, the way Sue depicted in the film, feel very haphazard and undercooked, because it was from Al's perspective, considering that Sue is the love of his life. And it certainly makes you think of strange narrative choices, and this can lead you to believe the entire film, being a lie or being a facade built by All to present himself to the police, rather than the film being a story basically that it wanted to tell on the surface level. That is, if you dig deeper into the film. And that's certainly the main thing I got from the film. And it strengthens the film being a noir film, because it shows that the characters are very cynical. They have their own self centered and selfish attempts to basically get what they want in life. And the way the film showed it is in a counterproductive way, not a counterproductive way, but in a different complementary way to how a lot of noir films did it back in the 40s and 50s. And that's what makes it so special. It's not something that you watch, and it's not something that you watch and say, oh, I'm entertained by this film because boom, action, etc., etc. It's something that has a lot of value to it, both artistically, from an artistic standpoint, and maybe even from a stylistic and technical standpoint, because the fact that the director was able to use all of these technical elements and form it into this picture, this detour picture, was very brilliant and was used in a way to heighten or strengthen and embolden the story that he wanted to tell. Now, the director has worked with films from the past. Before he directed Detour, he worked with people like Murnau for The Last Laugh and Sunrise, and he has certainly worked with a lot of German expressionist filmmakers. And the influence certainly shows here. From the exaggerated lighting to the dialogue to the heavy atmosphere, and to the emphasis on the mise-en-scene, the use of the mise-en-scene to emphasize or slowly reveal the inner turmoil and conflict, the latent desires that these characters feel. And the performances from Tom Neal and Anne Savage certainly captured the very spirit of film noir. Tom Neal as Al, he has that very brooding, non-solicitous, passive look throughout the entire film, as if he doesn't care at all. And we have Anne Savage, who, forgive me for the pun, for her savage and brutal performance in this film. And one thing that struck me the most with how the performances were done and how they acted was how none of them have an ounce of humanity. And that basically also reflects noir. Noir is not just, a crime genre. It is a genre known for its characters who are very nihilistic in a way, very cynical, as I've stated earlier, very cynical, nihilistic, and fatalistic. And you could observe with Tom Neal's character, he may seem passive, he may seem uninterested with how everything's happening, and he may seem like he only would want to go to Sue. But as you dissect the film more, you think, is he being passive just for the sake of it, or is he being passive because he's trying to hide something? Is he being passive because he's trying to conceal certain information from the police? And I actually feel like a detective while I was sort of picking the film apart during later viewings, because I would try to observe all the strange and weird narrative jumps. And yeah, the film is definitely brilliant in that aspect. And Roger Ebert, I've read Roger Ebert's review on this film, and he stated that the film had a very Freudian quality because it showed how our traumatic experiences can be reworked or rewritten into fantasies that can basically comfort us or that can cope with us. And this film felt like an entire coping mechanism for our main character, because the film opens with a sort of monologue he just narrates and says, "Oh, you probably won't believe my story," etc., etc., with that passive and smug look. But you realize sooner or later that all of this is fake. And yeah, the film does not give easy answers, and this is certainly just one interpretation. But if you look at it from a nihilistic and noirish standpoint, it shows how much how much lies and deceit is crafted in this sort of tightly neat film. Actually, the film was only 70 minutes long, 70 or 67 minutes long. And another aspect that strengthened his sort of film being an alibi was the way the story was told from the dialogue. As I have stated earlier, German expressionist films tend to have very exaggerated dialogue. And the way the dialogue was used here was it felt very nitpicky. It felt very, not bombastic, but it felt perfect in a way. Example, the scene where, actually the few scenes in the beginning where he was playing the piano, he was playing a Chopin waltz, and his love of his life, Sue, approaches him. The way they talked felt almost mechanical, almost monotone, almost as if it was something planned out, or if it was something fake, something made up. We never know. And the fact that we never know as an audience makes the film so much more better and brilliant than what the surface level story actually show us. Because yeah, we only have 1 hour and the narrative is fairly simple to follow, but the way we as a viewer interact with the film, as if we were investigators or detectives, sort of picking apart and analyzing the film, makes the film even much more longer and much more dissectable and much more have meat than what some other people actually think it may have. And in terms of Al, the protagonist, at first, it might seem easy to empathize with this character. If you watch this film on a first viewing, on a surface level viewing, you see him, the struggled pianist who just trying to get to the love of his life, but ends up being, convicted for 2 murders. You think, oh, this protagonist is very sad and very poor. But as you examine the film in a way, and if you examine it as an alibi, there are existential questions relating to the psyche of our protagonist. We are led to question our beliefs as the viewer. And since the entire film was a lie, you are led to question the belief of how much of the film presented was actually true. In that sense, if the entire thing, the entire film was a fabricated reality, how much of it would ring true, and it would make you think of sort of the situations or the sort of circumstances you deal in with life, or the talks you have with people, or basically stuff that you read online, and you start to think, oh, how much of this is true? And when you talk to someone and they give you specific information, how much of this is true? How much of this is real? How much of it is a performance? And the fact that the film shows that we are all clowns. No, just kidding. The fact that the film shows that we all have our facades and we all have different masks depending on different people just heightened that Detour, even though it's a crime and noir film, it's not applied just for this genre. It can be applied to every genre, and Detour is very universal in that aspect, and I highly admire the film from that. And aside from the film being a brilliant noir and a very good German expressionist film, I really love. Again, I have to mention, I really love Ulmer's uncanny ability to show a lot by not showing at all. This is also similar to his other film, The Black Cat, which, both films run at around the same length, or around 60 to 70 minutes. But his ability to make the viewers think is done in a way that really makes me question how other films present their values and how ham-fisted a lot of these values may be. And there was this recent movie I watched, The Hunt, which in almost every dialogue it ham-fists its values and its racial and discriminatory values to the audience. It's even used in the dialogue, and it's just very mind-blowingly obnoxious actually, and that made me appreciate Dieter even more, even on multiple rewatches, was how this film make us makes us think as a viewer. And even though my interpretation is not necessarily the interpretation that Ulmer was ultimately going for, it still made me question a certain aspect of society or a certain aspect of our life, and that's just heightens what cinema means for me, what art means for me, questioning the values that we have as an individual. And yeah, Dieter is one of the more like lesser known noir films, since it's buried in the more popular ones by, say, Billy Wilder or Orson Welles. But I really do give Edgar Ulmer huge amounts of appreciation, and I highly recommend Detour, especially if you haven't seen it yet. Now, in terms of film noir, if you're trying to get into film noir, I'm not sure if Ulmer's a good suggestion, since his films tend to be more oblique, and it tends to hide its values, and not just entertainment value, but sort of the message that it wants to give to its audience. But I really do recommend Detour, and it's a very short film. So if you're trying to save a lot of time, watch Detour, or maybe The Black Cat, which is more of a horror film, but the two basically work in the same manner. So yeah, that's all I have to say for Detour, which is a 1945 American noir crime film. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and see you next time.